What is going on, YouTube? It's your boy Vertical Hairline, and today I'm going to be starting a new series where I review different ski resorts that I've been to and know pretty well. Now, before we continue, I'd like to explain how I will be scoring the resorts. So we're going to have 10 different categories, all rated 1 through 10. And these categories are lift tickets, ease of access, parking, lodging, lifts, terrain, snow conditions, park, food, views, and of course après-ski or nightlife or shopping. And then once we get those, we'll combine them to get the final resort score and two other ones. The pure skiing score, which is based on purely just how good the skiing is. It's based on stuff like the terrain, the park, the lift tickets, how good the lifts are and where they take you, stuff like that. And then the other one, which I'll call the family trip score, which is all the other things like the views, the après-ski, the food, and the lodging, stuff like that. Now first we're going to start off with the lift tickets. Now the lift tickets are completely average, so you can probably guess what the score is going to be. 129 on weekdays, 149 on weekends, and holidays it's 169. So it's a little bit upcharged for most blackout days on the Icon and Mountain Collective passes. So if you want to go on a blackout day and you have one of those passes, it'll cost you a little more than it normally would. But yeah, so lift tickets is going to get a 5, completely average score. Yeah, just a completely baseline average score of 5. Next we have ease of access. Now it takes 20 minutes to get to Snowbasin from Ogden, which is probably where you're going to be staying. And if you want to get there from Salt Lake City, it'll be 50 minutes. So around there, if you're staying with friends in the Salt Lake area, it'll take 50 minutes to get up to Snowbasin. If you're willing to drive that, it's not too bad, especially if you're used to driving a long ways for ski resorts. The altitude does not change that much. Now, most people, whenever they go into a ski resort, the altitude changes a lot, and depending on if you have any underlying issues or whatever, that could really hurt you. Like, we had this one friend that came up and we went to Alta with them, and they started puking everywhere, like once we got up there, because the altitude changed so much. But you don't have to worry about that at Snowbasin because there's not too much variation in elevation between Ogden, Salt Lake City, all of those places up to the base of Snowbasin. If you do have problems with altitude, try not to go to any of the peaks, obviously. But because of that, it's going to give it an ease of access score of 8. Also, a quick note, they do have a Wasatch Adaptive Sports Center there, so if you are disabled person and you'd like to ski, they have like the wheelchair skis or whatever. Sorry, I have no clue what they're called. I don't ski in one of them, but they also have that. So if you are disabled, they have snow bikes, they have a ton of stuff for disabled people like that. So next we have parking, and parking is very, very good at Snowbasin because they had the Olympics there, so they had to fit everyone in their cars during the Olympics back 2000 whatever into Snowbasin, so they built a ton of parking lots and they're still there today for use of the people who are visiting the resort. They have shuttles running in between all the parking lots, picking you up and bringing you back to the base where you can actually get on the lift and start skiing, because most of the parking lots are a little bit farther away. But that's going to bring their score to a very, very above average score of 9. And the reason it's just 9 and not 10 is because of only one base area, which means everybody's concentrated into one base area, so you don't have options to park and ski different terrain if you want to for your first run. Now next we have lodging, and lodging gets 0. There's no lodges at all. It's kind of unique about Snowbasin. It decreases the amount of skiers that are there usually because there's no one that can actually stay at the resort. There's one Airbnb that's on the road to the way there. We did it once, but you can't hold like a hotel worth of people there. So for that, lodging gets a 0, obviously, not because the lodging's bad, just because there isn't. So next we have the lift situation. Now, Snowbasin has their lifts really well figured out, especially on the main side of the mountain. It's almost perfect. They just have to put better lifts in for the Porcupine lift, or Porky as most people call it, and the Becker lift. Now, most people only use Becker to get over to Strawberry, but it is a pretty slow lift and it's kind of like a park bench. It's really uncomfortable. That makes the main side of the mountain really good, but the Strawberry side, the newer, more recently added side, only has one gondola that takes everyone up. And the thing about it is it's the only way to get back to anywhere. So if you're at the bottom and at the gondola, you can't ski away and go to another lift. You have to take that lift up, which makes it a very, very, very long line. Me and my friend Jake were there, and it went all the way into like the main run. People couldn't even ski that run anymore due to how long the line was. So they need to figure out a more permanent solution for the line there, maybe make a cat track back to the base area, or put another lift that goes up to Sisters Ridge or something so that all the extreme skiers can take a different lift so that they won't be crowding over the gondola. So that'll bring the lift score to an 8. So next up we have the terrain, snow, and conditions. Now the snow, obviously it's in Utah, so the snow is always great, light and fluffy, which if it was just based on snow, it would be like about an 8. Utah snow, average for Utah, very good for anywhere else, which makes it very good snow. You'll enjoy skiing in it. As far as terrain goes, for the Ogden resorts, it's actually way above average because they own all the big mountains in that area. So at the top of every lift, you can usually take a small hike to get to some pretty gnarly terrain like John Paul, No Name, Strawberry, Lone Tree. The only exception is Needles due to its only purpose really is to get you to Needles Lodge and all the groomers that lead back to the bottom of the mountain. But other than that, all the lifts take you to a place where you can hike to get cool places and into the backcountry. It's very easy to get into the backcountry. There's a lot of gates, and the backcountry in Ogden is very fun to ski. I've been out of bounds a few times before. Now the conditions is what brings the score down a lot. It's very, very windy. The locals call it Blow Basin due to how windy it is. But it's literally just a flat mountain with rocks at the top, which makes it so incredibly windy. It's not in a canyon or anything. There's nothing to block the wind. So on the peaks, it's so windy. On some of the hikes, like the No Name hike, you literally have to like lay down if there's a burst of wind because you could just fall over and your skis would fly off the ridge. So that's gonna bring the score down to an 8. So next we have the park. Now the Snowbasin has 3 parks, I think, like the beginner park. There's the Orson Park, which is their big one, and then Bluegrass, which is their rail park. Now they have a ton of rails. They have a ton of sick rails and boxes that they store. These trees, if you're just looking at them, super sick. They always put up new rails every year, so every year you come back, you can expect different rails to be there from what was there last year. They have a lot of employees in the park crew, which means the rails usually probably won't be sticky. I'm not good enough to do rails. I'm not a park rat either, so I don't know if they're sticky or not, but from what I see, people don't look like they're sliding too slow on them, so the park crew does a good job with the rails, and the jumps are really well built. Those are one things I do hit. The jumps, basically perfect, but due to their park size, there's not a lot of actual park. There's about 3 jumps in Orson's and 3 small ones and a hip in Bluegrass, and only a few rails are there in each one, so that's going to bring it down to a score of just 6, just barely above average, but still pretty good. The park's pretty good. Now next we have food. Now ski resort food is always expensive. You guys probably know this, even if you don't ski a lot. If you've ever been to a ski resort, even to pick up a friend and you just want to buy a bag of chips, it's like $6 sometimes. That's an overestimation, but it's still pretty expensive. The food is above average for seafood as far as quality goes, but it's far below average for price. It is overpriced even for ski food standards. So because of that, the food's gonna get a score of 4 because it's really good food, but is incredibly expensive. Unless you're Bill Gates, you'd agree with me and give it a 4. So next we have views. Now the views from the top of Tin Can or the Allen Peak Tram and the top of Strawberry are amazing. You're just overlooking this massive Ogden city. You can see the lake, Salt Lake, in the background. And it's really cool to see like suburbs everywhere from the top of a ski lift. And Tin Can, you can overlook this massive canyon that goes down and opens up into Ogden again. And it just looks really cool. The sense of scale is really cool. And if you're at the top of John Paul and you look at Mount Ogden Bowl and see someone skiing the traverse there, it is just a massive mountain. It has this cell tower on the top. It looks really cool. So because of that, the views are gonna get a very above average score of 8 because everything just looks big there and it's super sick. Even though it's not a super massive mountain, everything just looks really cool. Now lastly, we have a praise ski. Now there's not much to do as far as a praise ski goes. A snow park city. They have something to do after the ski lifts close. It's called Cinnabar, but there's barely any seating, even without the 6 feet rule as of the global pandemic that's happening now. But again, they don't have a bar. They don't have any meaningful shops. They have basically just a really large gift shop. You can get some cool souvenirs, but nothing that's really valued in shopping. There's no like clothes or anything. And I'm gonna go back to this. There's no bar, so most of the afterlife, even though I'm a minor, I know is in the bar at a ski resort, which they don't have. I'm not complaining, but there's no bar. You can get some drinks, but there's still no bar. So because of that, they're gonna get a score of 2, very below average, because there's quite literally nothing to do after the lifts close. You just pack your bags and get home. So this brings out the final scores. Now the final score for purely skiing is 36, and that's very above average if you count everything up. They actually have a ton of cool terrain. Obviously it's Utah, the snow is great. The only thing that sets it back by a lot is the small park and the windy conditions and the cold conditions sometimes, but still a very good, very above average score of 36 for purely skiing. Now the next score, the family trip score, is going to have 22 out of 50 because there is no après skiing, there is no lodging, and the only thing that brings it up is the good parking, the average lift tickets, and the great views. And because of that, they only get 22 out of 50. Now all those combined rounds out the final score to be a 58. Now that is mostly due to the low après ski score, absence of lodging, the food price, and the lift tickets. Everything else for the pure skiing score is good, but it's just barely above average because of its great skiing, but everything else except for the skiing pulls it down by a lot. If you want to see more of these videos, make sure to comment down below, dislike if you don't want to see more of the videos, like if you do, and tell me if I'm doing the rating categories wrong, if you want me to change the score of this or whatever. Just tell me your opinions down in the comments below. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Adios.